On this video, we will be going over section 3 of your training manual, which is tenant data upload using third-party software. On this particular training, I will go over how you will upload your tenant data using your third-party software. There are two ways you can do that. The first way would be to upload all your buildings in a project at one time, or you can upload your tenant information building by building. First, I'm going to go over how you would actually upload all your buildings used at the same time. So once you're into the system, you will input your project ID number or you would choose any other options here to access your property, or you will access your property from here. I'm going to access my property from here and click OPM Apartments. And it's going to take me to the screen that has the three squares. And from here, you see there would be a field here that says import all building data. I will make this choice if I want to input all my building data at the same time. Once you click that field, you will come to the upload all building data screen. Here you will actually be asked to choose your file. You will click here where it says choose file, and then it will bring up your browser. Once you click your property from the browser, it will populate here. Right now it says no file chosen because you haven't chosen a file yet. But once you click here, it brings up your browser. You choose your file, it will populate here. Once that's done, you will have the option of either checking whether or not you want to overwrite any existing unit activity in the system, or if you want to just upload the information that you're trying to input into the system, which means it's not going to overwrite anything. It's just going to add to the system the information, the tenant data that you're wanting to upload. If you Again, if you check the box, it's going to overwrite. So once you make the decision as to whether or not to check this box here, then you will click Upload Document. And once you click the Upload Document, it's going to start reading your information. And you will either get an message that says your upload was successful, or you will get an error report. If you do receive an error report, there is an Appendix A in your training manual, and that document gives you a list of all the different types of errors you could receive in the system. So that's basically how you would do it if you want to input all of your buildings at one time. If you're actually, I'm going to cancel out of here and go back to the screen, the option screen. If you want to just input your information one building at a time, or just input one building in the system, information, one building of information in the system, you will either click on view here to access the building screen, or you will click here where it says buildings. So I'm just going to click on buildings, and it's going to take me to the building screen. Once you're in the building screen, you will see there's an option here that says import building data. If you want to click on this button and input your building data, you must first choose which building that you are going to import your tenant data from. Your tenant data into. So if I just click on import data, building data, without choosing the building first, I'm going to get a message here that says, please select a building to continue. And then I'm going to select building 1, and then click import building data. And it's going to give me the exact same screen that I received before when I imported all of my building at one time. It's going to give me the upload data screen. And here I'm going to choose the file. And once I click choose file, it's going to bring up my browser. And from the browser, I'm going to choose the file that I want to upload my tenant data from. Once you choose the file, it's going to populate here, and then you're going to select whether or not you want to overwrite the existing unit activity. If you do want to overwrite existing unit activity, you will click the box here. If not, you will leave it unchecked and then click upload document. Once you click upload document, you will either receive your upload was successful, or you receive an error report, and you will have to search for the errors in the document listed in Appendix A. I'm now going to go to another screen to show you how you will upload using a totally different screen than the one that I just went over. If you use one of the options here, either projects, view all, projects here, or inputting your information here and clicking search, you will get a different screen. So I'm actually just going to input my Georgia ID number and click search, and I have a different screen than I had before. So again, this is the project screen. It's going to give me a list of all the properties that's listed in the system for my management company. I'm going to first choose which property that I want to input my tenant data into, and then click proceed to buildings, or I could just click on the number of buildings here. Again, to use any of these buttons up here, I will have to choose one of the properties below. So to go to proceed to buildings, that means I'm just going to input my tenant data one building at a time. So I'm going to click on the property first, proceed to buildings, and then I have my building screen. And from here, I can I would choose which building that I'm going to input the information into, and then I'm going to choose building 3. And then once I'm in building 3, I'm going to import building data. And again, I'm going to choose the file, and or and then it's going to populate here. And then I'm going to decide whether or not I want to overwrite existing unit activity. If I do, I want to check the box. If not, I'm going to leave the box unchecked. And then I'm going to click on upload document. So that's how you would actually input your tenant data into the system using a third-party software. Another thing I want you to notice also is on here where it says current reporting period. Before you actually input your information for your building, you want to make sure you're in the correct current reporting period. Basically saying that for building 1, the current reporting period is showing that April of 2021 was the last time you input um, transactions into the system. So if you want to input transactions for May, you will need to change the current reporting period. So to do that, I'm going to actually click on this building and then click change reporting period, because for me to choose any of the options here again, I have to make a selection at below the buttons. So I'm going to change the reporting period. It's stating now that the reporting period for building 1 is April of 2021, but I actually want to put in transactions for May of 2021. So I'm going to change this reporting period to May 1st. So your reporting periods are automatically set up in the system to be on a monthly basis. So you will have to input your transaction. You will have to input your reporting period from the first day of the month to the last day of that particular month. So I'm going to input 0501 2021. And then it's asking me to put in the last date. And I'm going to put in. So I'm going to, and here it's asking you whether or not you want to update all of your buildings to this reporting period. If you do, you will check the box. If you only updating for this one building, building one, then you will leave the box unchecked. And then you will click save. And you notice I received an invalid reporting period, report period. And it's basically saying that the project frequency is monthly, which is automatically set in the system on a monthly basis, and that the report period ending date should be 5/31/2021. So if I click OK, I go back and notice I put in 5/28/2021, which basically saying that there's actually 31 days in May and not 28 days. So I would just go back and change that to, and I'm going to leave it unchecked because I only want that reporting period to be changed for building one, and then click save, and the information will save successfully. So once I click cancel, you'll see now my reporting period has changed to May of 2021. So anytime you're inputting your information into the system, please make sure you check your current reporting period before you start, because it's going to give you an error message if you try to import information for the wrong reporting period. And the same is going to be for even if you manually input into the system, you need to make sure the current reporting period is for the reporting period you're trying to input your tenant transactions for. And just keep in mind, your reporting period are done only on a monthly basis. And that concludes how you would actually input your information into the system using your third-party software. I also want to mention that on page 19 of your training manual, there's a section there is titled Error Messages. And basically, it's just going to give you a little more information on how to alleviate errors when you're trying to upload into the system. First is stating that on Appendix A, there's a document titled Multifamily XML Upload Error Messages. And that particular document is going to give you all of the types of errors you could possibly receive when you're uploading into the system. So if you receive an error report, the first thing you want to do is to check that document, excuse me. First thing you want to do is check that document and make sure is to check that document and make sure that your error message is listed. And what you would do is look at the error message, and it will give you information on how you would correct the errors and the meaning of the error that you received. So before you contact DCA with help on any error messages that you receive, you must first check in that document and try to correct those errors using the messages that's listed in that particular document. Another example that I gave is a list of your the tenant transaction sequences as to how your document data, your tenant data should be listed in the system. To alleviate any upload errors, you want to make sure that you select the correct XML file to be imported into the system. You want to make sure the building and unit numbers are correct that you're trying to import into the system, because your buildings and unit numbers must match the building and unit numbers listed in the emphasis system. If not, you're going to get a building error and or a unit error. You also want to make sure that your tenant transactions are listed in the correct sequence, basically saying that if you want to input a move in, you need to make sure that that particular unit is vacant. If you want to input a move out or a recert, you need to make sure that that particular unit is occupied by a tenant. And I also gave you examples on how um, your sequences should look in the system. Another thing you want to do is you want to run a LA, the LIHTC Home Annual Occupancy Report, not only just before you start inputting your tenant transactions, but you also might want to run that on a monthly basis to make sure that the system is up to date with what you have on your rent roll. So you will run that particular occupancy report before you start inputting your tenant transactions in for the first time. When you run that report, it's going to give you the last tenant transaction that was extracted from the MITRE system into emphasis. So that will also give you an idea where you need to start inputting transactions into the system. So we stopped using MITREs on December the 10th of 2020, and the last extraction was um, the last tenant extraction from MITREs was done on December the 14th of 2020. So if you have input any transactions into MITREs after December the 14th of 2020, it's very possible that those transactions didn't migrate over into the emphasis system, and you're going to have to input those into emphasis. So that's why it's a good idea to make sure you run that LIHTC Home Annual Occupancy Report first to see where you need to start with inputting your tenant transactions. And this is whether you're going to do it using your third party software or if you're going to manually input your transactions. Also, you want to be sure that you delete all of your Midas ID numbers from your software. You remember you were using a 6-digit Midas ID number for your properties to input information into the Midas system that no longer works for emphasis. So you need to make sure you replace all of your Midas ID numbers with the actual Georgia ID number, or your upload will be rejected from the system or you'll get an error message. So and when you input your Georgia ID number, make sure you include the dashes for your Georgia ID number. Another thing is to keep in mind that the emphasis system is not using NAMA version 6 at the moment. So if you are using NAMA version 6, before you upload into emphasis, you need to change that to version 5. And that concludes how you will actually input your tenant data using a third-party software.